Welcome to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, founder of the Reiki Business Collective and creator of the Build Your Reiki Business program, sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Greetings, welcome, and thanks for joining me for this episode of the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian Stone, your guide on the Reiki business journey. And in this episode, we're talking about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome in your Reiki business, on your Reiki business journey. Specifically, we're talking about imposter syndrome and how it shows up in each of the three Reiki business stages. In all of my work with Reiki practitioners over the years, I have discovered that there are three stages on the Reiki business journey that practically all practitioners go through. They are the Nebula, Forest, and Tower. Each stage has its own particular challenges. And if you're curious to learn more about these stages and discover where you are on the Reiki business journey, the link to grab the 3 stages of the Reiki business journey free training is down below. Imposter syndrome is incredibly common on the Reiki business journey. And so if you are right now feeling like an imposter, or you ever have, congratulations, you are in a lot of company. And if you haven't yet felt imposter syndrome on your Reiki business journey, don't be surprised if at some point you do. And when you do, this is no problem. Because so often we think that imposter syndrome means that we're not meant to have a Reiki business, or that we're not good enough to have a Reiki business. And so when we feel the imposter syndrome feelings, no matter which stage they show up in, we often have the feeling that we don't belong. Of course, this is at the heart of imposter syndrome. I talk more about this in a previous podcast episode on imposter syndrome. That link is down below, where you can learn more about imposter syndrome and how to move through it. But imposter syndrome, even though it is very common at all stages on the Reiki business journey, it often shows up in different ways in each stage. So when we're starting our Reiki business and we are in the nebula, when we have the vision, we have excitement, so often imposter syndrome shows up as questions about legitimacy and permission. In the nebula, our feelings of imposter syndrome are really all about questions about whether or not we have the right to start a Reiki business. So in the nebula, we might be asking questions like, who am I to start a Reiki business? Who am I to charge for Reiki? Am I really qualified to offer Reiki to others and to get paid for it? In the nebula, these kinds of questions hold us back from putting ourselves out there because we are so uncertain that we even have the right to do so. We stand back, we hide, we don't tell people we're a Reiki practitioner. We don't tell people that we are starting a Reiki business because we're just not sure, oftentimes, if we're ready. We're just not sure if we're good enough. We're just not sure if we should be doing this. Some of the fears in the nebula are concerns about someone asking us a question that we don't know, or even asking us how we explain Reiki and not having a specific answer for that. And those feelings of imposter syndrome in the nebula keep us from doing the very things that are going to help us start and grow our Reiki business. What we really should be doing in the nebula, or what is really the best use of our time in the nebula, is having conversations and making connections, talking about Reiki, talking about our Reiki business, talking about how Reiki can help. But with those imposter syndrome feelings, they have us doing things like perfecting our logo, or tweaking our website, or trying to choose the perfect business name, when really those things are just a way of hiding, a way to avoid doing the things that make us feel like an imposter or that we have imposter feelings around. So in the nebula, imposter syndrome very often shows up as hiding and even avoiding doing the hard and scary things. In the forest, the point on our Reiki business journey where we maybe have some clients, we've done some things in our Reiki business, maybe we've been doing them for months, maybe years. But in the forest, we have some experience and enough to realize that, oh, this Reiki business thing is maybe a little harder than I thought. But in the forest, imposter syndrome shows up a little differently from how it often does in the nebula. And in the forest, because building a Reiki business can be so challenging and does take time, our imposter syndrome feelings often center on the fears that we don't actually know what we're doing. And we end up comparing ourselves to other Reiki practitioners and where they appear to be. So then in the forest, imposter syndrome shows up as a reflection of our own progress or lack thereof. And we have fears and feelings and questions about how everyone else seems to be growing faster than we are, and how everyone else seems to be so much more successful than we are. And maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I should be doing the things that I see other practitioners doing because they look successful. And what's wrong with me that I can't figure this out? That what's wrong with me question is at the center of imposter syndrome in the forest, where we feel like an imposter because we feel like we are not measuring up, that we don't belong because we're not as good as everyone else. In the nebula, imposter syndrome is about being worthy to start a Reiki business. And in the forest, imposter syndrome is about fears that we're not doing it right. And so, like in the nebula, the imposter syndrome is centered on not feeling or wondering if we're good enough, but it's for different reasons. Because in the nebula, we're just wondering if we're good enough, worthy enough to even get started, to even do the Reiki business thing. In the forest, we're wondering if we're worthy because it just doesn't seem like we can figure this out. And why can't we figure this out? And what's wrong with us that we can't? Now, in the nebula, imposter syndrome can result in us hiding and not putting ourselves out there. And in the forest, imposter syndrome can result in us trying to do all of the things, trying to figure out what will work. In the forest, imposter syndrome that comes from comparison leads us often to try more things that also don't seem to work, that just make us feel like even more of an imposter. And in the tower, the third stage of the Reiki business journey, this is a point on the Reiki business journey where we have some experience. We've done the Reiki business thing. Maybe we've even had some success. And then something changes. Maybe the business stops working the way it used to. Maybe clients aren't coming in the way that they used to. Maybe we want to offer something completely different, change our business model, but however it shows up, something is off. Things no longer feel in alignment, and something needs to change, even if we're not sure what. But oftentimes, we realize that the business we have isn't the business that we want anymore. And if the tower experience isn't quite that drastic, we know at the very least things are out of alignment and something needs to change. When things feel out of alignment, whether in our Reiki business or any other aspect of our life, it often brings up a lot of questions and uncertainties about the very things that brought us to this tower moment. We question those activities, we question those decisions. And at the tower on our Reiki business journey, we can feel in some way that we have failed simply because we've gotten to the point of things not feeling in alignment any longer. And when we question everything that came before and all of the decisions and actions that led us to the tower, we can feel like an imposter, feel like we don't belong, and ask, who are we to continue on? Imposter fears in the tower can be things like, if I make big changes in my business, everyone will think that I'm failing. I can't pivot. I can't realign because then everyone will think my business hasn't been working or that I don't know what I'm doing and I should have this figured out by now. And these fears, these imposter syndrome fears in the tower can keep us from making the very changes in our Reiki business that we need to in order to have an aligned business that resonates with us and resonates with our clients and students. At the tower stage, we need to make changes in our Reiki business. But the imposter syndrome fears, the who am I questions, can hold us back from making those changes. Because the Reiki business journey is not linear, and because it is cyclical, when we start making the necessary changes in our Reiki business, we often have feelings just like when we're first starting out. And so we end up, as we're making the changes in our Reiki business, with those nebula kinds of feelings of imposter syndrome. Who am I to make these changes? Who am I to pivot in my business? Am I worthy of making these changes? Do I have permission to make these changes? So imposter syndrome shows up at all stages of the Reiki business journey. And when it shows up for us, there are a few things that I recommend, no matter which stage it shows up in. Number one, I encourage us to acknowledge the imposter syndrome. Simply acknowledge it and explore what's at the center of it. So where is the feeling of being an imposter really coming from? I recommend just noticing when you have those feelings of imposter syndrome, what situations tend to trigger it. Oftentimes in the nebula, it's situations that call for us to talk about Reiki, talk about ourselves as Reiki practitioners, and talk about our Reiki businesses. In the forest, things that often trigger feeling like an imposter are seeing what other practitioners are doing and comparing ourselves to them. And in the tower, what often triggers feelings of imposter syndrome is that sense of things not being in alignment and the worry about why things feel misaligned in the first place. So simply recognizing when we feel like an imposter, how it shows up, where and why is really helpful, because imposter syndrome is inevitable. Now, I talk about this in the previous episode of the podcast, so I encourage you to tune in for more on imposter syndrome. But imposter syndrome is inevitable anytime we're stretching out of our comfort zone. And so imposter syndrome on our Reiki business journey is not something that should be feared, seen as a bad thing, or taken as proof that we're really not meant to have a Reiki business. Because if you're pushing yourself to talk about Reiki, to go deep and focus in your Reiki business, to make the necessary changes to realign, then you're going to have feelings of imposter syndrome. It's just a result of pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. So you're not bad or wrong when imposter syndrome shows up. Now, for me, on my Reiki business journey, imposter syndrome showed up the most in the forest when I brought my Reiki business online. And I, of course, started comparing myself to everyone else. All of the certifications they had, all of the modalities they were using, all of the ways they seemed so much more successful. So that it almost resulted in me taking some additional training that I didn't really want or need. And I'm so glad I gave myself a good talking to and realized what was really at the root of those feelings of imposter syndrome. And then during a tower experience, and I say a tower because I've had more than one on my Reiki business journey, I had questions and feelings of imposter syndrome when I was pivoting my business, when I was making changes in who I was serving and how I was showing up. And each of those times, I was just pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And the imposter feelings themselves were simply a signal that I was growing. But what would you say to a friend who was having these kinds of questions and uncertainties? Would you say to them, yeah, you're right, you're not meant to have a Reiki business? Would you say, yeah, you're right, everybody else is better than you are? Yeah, you're right, don't make any changes, everyone's going to think you don't know what you're doing? No way. You would encourage your friend. You would tell them they're awesome and they can do this and you believe in them. So when you experience imposter syndrome on your Reiki business journey, pretend you are a friend. Talk to yourself like you would a friend. Give yourself grace. Give yourself compassion. Practice the precepts and love yourself through the imposter syndrome feelings, because they show up in all of the stages. They show up again and again, and they're not bad or wrong, and you are not bad or wrong anytime you feel like an imposter on your Reiki business journey. So, do you feel like an imposter on your Reiki business journey? Have you ever felt like an imposter on your Reiki business journey? Drop it down below in the comments and let us know. And whether you are in the Nebula, forest, or tower, or wondering which stage you are in, grab the free 3 stages of the Reiki Business Journey training to discover where you are, how to move forward, and how to attract clients for your particular stage. reikibusiness.com/journey. The link is down below. Sending so many blessings and best wishes to your imposter syndrome feelings and to your Reiki business. Thanks for tuning in to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and send to a friend. Learn more about the Build Your Reiki Business program at standingstoneshealing.com/build. Sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business.